It is a big day for America, one to celebrate. I'm excited. I hope you're excited. Look, Donald Trump is excited, and I got to hand it to him. He is spreading the wealth. He is saying this is a wonderful day because everyone in the Middle East came together. I'll tell you, he's the only guy who could have gotten that done.
Well, we had a lot of great success and a lot of great countries that wanted this to happen. You know, countries that you wouldn't think. Qatar was fantastic. Saudi Arabia was fantastic. UAE was fantastic. Jordan, the King Abdullah he just couldn't have been nicer. I call him general, but president. You can call him whatever you want. But El-Sisi, strong, tough, like an unbelievable guy. They all wanted to see this happen. That's the amazing thing. Everybody came together at this point. If you go back 6 months or 7 months, you would have said a thing like this is impossible. I mean, we have 35 different countries over there, all there just about all with their leaders, not just, sending somebody over. And they all wanted this to happen. And I think I had a big impact, but, I can have a big impact. If they don't want it to happen, it's not going to happen. They all wanted this to happen, and it's one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. I mean, I watched your coverage, and I really appreciate it. You're a real professional, not because it's good or bad. You're just really professional. It'd be great if other people could do what you do, because, they put negative spins. But even if you look at the spin that the other, I would call them the fake news, has been putting on it, everybody's been positive. It's sort of a miracle, actually.
It's really wonderful. He was willing to go about this in a whole different way, and I think that's a big part of it. He is not somebody who's going to sit there and read buckets and buckets of information that's been printed out by a bunch of staffers at the State Department. He is someone who trusts his own instinct, who trusts his own conversations with individuals far above trusting all of the research from the State Department. And so it's a point of contention. They've never liked that, right? The CIA hands him this, State Department hands him this. They're like, here, go read it. He's like, no, thank you. I'll just go watch TV. Buy like 5 TVs. He's got, maybe a lot of people don't know this. Off of the Oval Office, there's this small corridor. There's a small room where some presidents have in the past chosen to work. He actually uses a little bit of a storage room. But if you go further down, there's a room that kind of looks like a dining room. Like it's like a dining room table that's there. And he sits on one end with his computer and he looks up and he's got TV after TV after TV. So he knows what's going on in the world in real time in a way that, I don't think a lot of presidents ever have done before. I don't think you've ever seen presidents watching that much TV and then calling people up and saying, tell me more, explain more, and then using his own judgment to come away with something. So he basically turned all the policy that we've been using historically on its head. And he said, how can I get a deal done here? Which meant he had to go to everyone. He had to get everyone on board. And that is exactly what he did. He built a coalition. And by the way, he's going to keep building. He's going to keep on building because he's got big plans for the peace board, as he's calling it. You know who else? I want to go to some sound from Ben Shapiro, who is very steeped in Middle East policy, a host of the Ben Shapiro Show. He was appearing on Fox and Friends, and he's saying something quite similar to what I'm saying. In other words, Donald Trump was able to kind of find the point, the deal-making point with all of these different countries, which is something that Biden wasn't able to do. Certainly Obama was not able to do. And this is the leverage he was able to use to really bring something together. Let's watch.
Well, I think the president ignored pretty much all the conventional wisdom, all the State Department conventional wisdom that has failed for 80 years. And that's why the president has a signally extraordinary record in the Middle East. He understands that in the Middle East, you actually have to force people to keep by their promises. He understands that supporting our allies in the Middle East is much smarter than pretending at neutrality between our allies and their enemies and our enemies as well. The president refused to accept the idea of an Iranian-dominated Middle East, and instead he gave the Israelis what they needed to succeed militarily. And diplomatically, he worked with erstwhile allies like Qatar and Turkey and actually made them promise that they were going to push Hamas into the corner. That's the thing that changed between 2 years ago or a year ago and now. President Trump is the added ingredient and Israeli military victory across the Middle East.
What worries you most about what we know about the series of events that have to take place to start rebuilding Gaza and get to the peace part? Is it phase 2 that you're most worried about?
Absolutely. Phase 1 is an extraordinary achievement, like a Nobel Prize worthy achievement by the president of the United States, one of the great diplomatic achievements of my lifetime.
But phase 2 is going to require everybody again being on board. You couldn't have gotten, though, it certainly couldn't have gotten to phase 2, right, without phase 1, because this is a president who basically just threw the sort of book of rules right out the window and said, no, I'm going to do this my way. I mean, kind of like he's done with everything, right? Which is why I keep going back to there's only one person that could have gotten this done. Somebody sent me a text. A rabbi who doesn't like Trump had sent out a note to Temple saying, this is all because of this, that, and the other, and sort of God and your prayers. And the person said, no, it's because I voted for Donald Trump 3 times. I thought that was great. Anyway, here's Donald Trump talking about the board of peace that he's putting together and the investment that's going to be needed. I mean, hey, you need some beachside condos in Gaza, right? Shh, better not say that. But anyway, he's going to find a way for everybody to make money and be happy.
Everybody wants to be on the board of peace. They said, would you be the chairman? I say, I'm pretty busy too. But whatever we can do to have peace in the Middle East, it's worth it. But everybody wants to go on the board of peace, so we're probably going to enlarge it. We're going to get, and the leaders, the top people, the top leaders, they want to be on the board of peace. A beautiful term. At first I wasn't sure, and then I realized how beautiful it is. And for the people of Gaza, the focus now must be on restoring the basics of a good life. We're going to have a lot of money coming into Gaza and a lot of rebuilding and building. It's not so much rebuilding, it's really building, cleaning up and building. And I'm pleased to announce that numerous countries of great wealth and power and dignity have come forward to me and just today and over the last week to say they want to help in the reconstruction of Gaza, putting up whatever money is necessary. And the money is, of course, it's a lot of money, but it's not much compared to the value or the wealth of these tremendous countries. And they are ensuring stability and success in the Middle East. So when you think about it, it's a very, very small amount of money is necessary, relatively speaking. And as those commitments are made, I'm going to let the world know who is doing it, because they really deserve great credit for doing it. And they're going to do something that's really monumental. This is a monumental day. This is a monumental moment in the history of the world beyond the Middle East. We've all agreed that supporting Gaza must be done to lift up the people themselves, but we don't want to fund anything having to do with the bloodshed, hatred, or terror, as has happened in the past. And for the same reason, we're also agreed that Gaza's reconstruction requires that it be demilitarized and that a new, honest civilian police force must be allowed to create a safe condition for the people in Gaza.
So this is like amazing, right? Like it really is amazing. And I want to play one more bite, but then we got to get to the Democrat reaction because, I mean, Barry, come on, show some class. I mean, he's like, he's mad. There was the tweet where he didn't thank Trump, and now he's out with some new sound on some podcast I got to show you. Kind of bitter, really and truly bitter, because guess what? Turns out the businessman who used to be the star of The Apprentice, he's running circles around you all day long, Barry. Here's Donald Trump on the new Middle East.
This is not only the end of a war. This is the end of an age of terror and death and the beginning of the age of faith and hope and of God. It's the start of a grand concord and lasting harmony for Israel and all the nations of what will soon be a truly magnificent region. I believe that so strongly.
And it will be, right? So this is incredible. It's incredible. Enjoy it like the whole world should rejoice. And yet, we got some people out there. Some people that don't seem to like recognize the importance of this. I mean, or at least Donald Trump's role in it. I mean, there was Barack Obama tweeting when news of this came, kind of begrudgingly, and congratulating the international community, but just leaving Donald Trump completely out, to which Don Jr. responded, hey, you're welcome. Like, you're welcome. But, he's got a bit of a grudge on his shoulder, shall we say, about Donald Trump, and I don't think that's ever going to end. In fact, he's the one that led us down this bad path with all the things that they did with Russia. That all was a derivative of Barack Obama's initiative. That's what Tulsi has exposed. So Ben Rhodes, remember he was like part of the NSC team. He has some kind of NGO with Jake Sullivan now. So the two of them are sitting there going, because this was Republican Party that did this. This was Donald Trump that did this. How unthinkable. And they can't really give him full credit. I want to go to Ben Rhodes speaking. This is the guy, do you guys remember? He said, you just put something out there and you tell enough people and you allow it to be like an echo chamber and then suddenly it's true. Oh yeah, like Russia. Here's Ben Rhodes talking about the historic, amazing deal that Donald Trump, who's going to go down, I tell you, this sticks, as the greatest president in history, got done. Rhodes reacts.
I give Trump credit for essentially finally applying some leverage on the Israeli government, on Bibi Netanyahu in particular, in a way that, frankly, we didn't even see President Biden do when he was in office. And I think some Qatar and Turkey were applying a lot of leverage on Hamas, and then that got us into this ceasefire. That's terrific. It's great that the Israeli hostages are reunited with their families, that aid is getting to Gaza. I would not go as far as to say that this kind of validates a certain, theory of diplomacy, because frankly, it's just a ceasefire. The problem has not been solved. It's not really
it's just a ceasefire. It's not a world peace deal. How dare you say that, right? Because that was Obama who was supposed to get the world peace deal. And he was going to go about it a very different way. His preference was to really bring Iraq into this, Iran right into the center. But with the Abraham Accords, that of course were the sort of brainchild of Jared Kushner, what you had happen instead was you marginalized Iran. And by taking out the nuclear capability, that was really critical in this entire step process, right? Because you took out the nuclear capability, thereby enabling the process to have some flexibility and some freedom. Because if you hadn't done that, everybody would have been worried, well, we can't let our guard down because they're not going to let their guard down. So that was a critical step. But again, this is huge. And here's Obama's reaction. I want to share with you. Poor Barry has literally no class in his old age. Not that he had any beforehand. His wife certainly doesn't. We know that. I mean, the woman wouldn't even show up for Jimmy Carter's funeral. Jimmy Carter, who they got to go out on a limb and call Donald Trump an illegitimate president. You couldn't even show up for his lousy funeral, let alone the inauguration, right? But she's got her issues. Plenty of them. And apparently he has his too. Watch.
Like, it feels like I remember when you left, and there is this sort of a vacuum, and in terms of like obviously my responsibility to my audience is different. But how do you sort of, did you feel the weight of that responsibility?
Yeah, I mean, what was unusual for me was obviously a lot of what I represented.
Yeah.
A lot of what Michelle and I had tried to project, the values, our thinking about America.
Uh-huh.
My successor seemed to represent the opposite.
Right.
He can't even say his name. My successor seemed to represent the opposite. What did you really represent, Barack? Weren't you the guy who said, you didn't earn that, you didn't make it because, I don't know, you're going back to your socialist roots there? You don't like big business, you don't like capitalism, you don't like all the things that have made the United States the best, most successful, most dominant country in the world?
Not seemed, did.
Yeah.
And so I think there was a lot of anger, a lot of sadness, some fear among a big chunk of the country. And one of the problems with the American political system is, although we have political parties, we don't have a parliamentary system. So basically, the president, in my case, Democrat, I leave office, and there's no obvious person who's now the shadow prime minister, the leader of the party for the Democrats, right? And so there were a lot of terrific people who were doing good work, but we have this weird situation where you don't have a designated person who's speaking on behalf of the whole party. So I actually found myself drawn back in to day-to-day politics or commentary more than I had wanted to be.
Oh, right. Because you kind of had to run the country. Yeah. you had to run the country when Biden was in there? Is that what it was about? Look, it's sort of very telling that on the day we get this enormous peace deal, you've got Barry out there saying, well, he didn't represent the values that we represented, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm sorry, like even Debbie Dingell, bless her, the Democrat, right? Is she from New York? Forgive me, no, she's not. Well, anyway, Debbie Dingell, wherever she's from, went on with Maria this morning, my friend over at Fox, and she said, look, it's a win. Even Jake Sullivan calls it a win.
So is there any message you'd like to send to President Trump after the release of these hostages today?
Look, I'll thank him. The hostages are home. Even Jake Sullivan said he helped do this.
Okay, so she's going to thank him. That would have been the better answer, the more appropriate answer for Barry. Look, I haven't watched the whole interview. Perhaps it gets better. But overall, you see a sort of a malaise in the media. They don't want to praise this. They don't want to say anything good about him. Christine Amanpour got in a little bit of hot water because she came out earlier today and said that most likely the hostages, the Israeli hostages, were better treated than the Gaza hostages. I mean, give me a break. She actually, on what is she basing that? Nothing. Okay, nothing. They just have their own personal biases, and yet they mask around as CNN. We are journalists with a capital J. They won't admit that they have their own preconceived notion of everything. So people were like, hey, what are you talking about? And so she just moments ago came out and apologized, saying this.
I spoke about what a day of real joy this is for Israeli families whose loved ones are finally being returned from 2 years of horrific Hamas captivity, and for civilians in Gaza who finally had a reprieve from 2 years of brutal and deadly war. I noted that for the hostages who are finally home, it'll take a long time for them to recover mentally and physically. But I regret also saying that they might have been treated better than many Gazans because Hamas used these hostages as pawns and bargaining chips. But that was insensitive and it was wrong. From speaking to many former hostages and their families, like everyone, I've been horrified at what Hamas has subjected them to over 2 long years. They've told me, as you've just heard, their stories of barely being able to breathe in the tunnels, not being allowed to cry, being starved and made to dig their own graves. And of course, today, some of the hostages are coming back in body bags.
Yeah. Well, most of the media just can't accept this. They just can't accept it. They've got, Obama who can't quite accept it with his lousy tweet. They've got the New York Times. I'm showing you all of the things. Trump pronounces end to Gaza war, but details remain unsolved. They can't give him any kind of wind, despite the fact that Biden could not get this win, despite the fact that Barack Obama could not get this win. They say Trump takes a victory lap, but avoids questions about what's next. I'm sorry, he just told you what's next. I played you the sound. He talked about how we're going to have a peace board and everybody wants to be involved in this. And there's going to be a lot of money pouring in because they got to do a lot of building. It's really kind of incredible. I'm going to cite a CNN anchor who actually did the right thing here and called out Barack Obama for his lack of class. I mean, real lack of class. You had the CNN anchor Amanpour doing the predictable thing, right? And then having to apologize for it. And then you have a woman who hosts a show every night that my friend Scott Jennings goes on. He's actually a reason to watch CNN these days. And she actually says, Barack, he should have been a bigger person here. Watch.
this post talking about the peace deal and the prospects of it. And Don Jr. responded to it. I'll finish it for you. Thank you, Donald Trump. Honestly, it's not unfair to say if President Obama's going to write a whole post about a peace deal, maybe he should acknowledge the president that brokered it.
Yeah, I would think he should acknowledge the president that brokered it. But we're talking about a petty man who really just can't get over his dislike for one Barack Obama, the petty man that cannot get over his dislike for one Donald Trump. It's sort of amazing.